good morning, good day, good evening, whatever time of day this finds you. Today we're continuing with our theme of lockdown emojis. Today it's this little guy here, the mind-blown emoji. Certainly applies to some of the aspects of lockdown, queues outside shops and gloves and masks and protective screens and all the rest. It's a bit mind-blowing where we've got to this year, but I think sometimes we overuse the mind-blowing emoji. When things aren't quite mind-blowing, I know I do. So I want to take just a few moments today to share a few things from the Bible that I personally find truly mind-blowing. I'm going to run through them real quick. Okay, firstly Moses. Well, I could probably just leave it there, but there's something specific that blows my mind about Moses. Faith's Hall of Fame, Prince of Egypt, fugitive, 40 years herding sheep in the wilderness, the famous bit wreaking havoc with the stick, 40 years herding cats in the wilderness after that, and then all the ups and downs of that. Well, after a whole lot of water under the bridge, we get to Numbers 12, where Aaron and Miriam confront Moses looking for a bit more recognition. Here it is, in Numbers 12. Then Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman who had married. Right in there with a low dig to start with. Verse 2, so they said, "Has the Lord indeed spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us also?" Which on the face of it's a fair point, I guess. And the Lord heard it. Whoops. Now the man Moses was very humble, more than all men who were on the face of the earth. Notice Moses doesn't even defend himself here. Verse 4, suddenly the Lord said to Moses, Aaron and Miriam, "Come out, you three, to the tabernacle of meeting." So the three came out. Bet they did. Any parent out there had that moment when something needs to be said and you don't just call out the one misbehaving. So they get the right, everyone down to the kitchen now. So verse 6, then he said, "Hear now my words." Okay, God's about to speak, so that means it's important. "If there's a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak to him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He alone is faithful in all my house." Living Bible has it there. He is completely at home in my house. Verse 8, "I speak with him face to face, even plainly and not in dark sayings, and he sees the form of the Lord." Remember Mount Carmel? But note the present tense here. "Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses?" Wow. Imagine being the kind of person who, when somebody comes out and criticizes you, God Almighty turns up in person and tells them exactly where to get off. All three of them were leaders in Israel. All three were prophets, their family. Moses didn't even stand out by birth, being the youngest. Torrin Wells says about identity, "Your identity is not based on what you do, not even what you do for God. God created you, and he alone holds the rights to say who or what you are. Your identity is who God says you are. And it's what God himself says about Moses here that blows my mind. In God's eyes, Moses was something else." Okay, jump back a bit to Genesis 22. You all know the story, Abraham and Isaac. I want to ask your permission just to use my imagination a little bit here, but don't panic. God calls him not to just any mountain for this scene. He points out Mount Moriah specifically. So they all go. You know what happens. It ends with a ram taking Isaac's place. But there's something here that my imagination would maybe refer to as circumstantial evidence, maybe. Not proof of anything, but certainly not a stretch. So after this story, Moriah was known for the incident with Abraham and Isaac. Jump to King David, who's just made a hash of it again. The census was a bad idea and now everyone's sick, and David sets up an altar and makes a sacrifice to God on Mount Moriah. Another redemption on Mount Moriah. Later on, he's planning the building of the great temple that Solomon's going to build. And the prophet Gad turns up and says, God wants it here. Guess where? Moriah. The Babylonians destroy the temple. They eventually rebuild it in Ezra and Nehemiah. Where? Moriah again. Herod does a remodel. Lo and behold, a few years later, an itinerant preacher from Nazareth is chasing the moneylenders out onto the streets of Mount Moriah, now Jerusalem, and telling them that in 3 days he's going to tear it down and rebuild it again. Only for his disciples to see him hanging on a cross there a few days later on Mount Moriah again. I don't believe there's too many coincidences in the Bible, do you? Well, here's where my imagination takes me on this. After the ram caught by the horns is sacrificed for Isaac, God speaks again on Moriah. It's not by a long shot the first time God has spoken to Abraham. God visited Abraham personally in Genesis 18 to tell him about Sarah bearing him a son. But just as God's heading off on his way to destroy Sodom afterwards, there's this. Verse 17. The Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do?" Now, hold on. What business is it of Abraham's what the Lord's going to do? Fair enough, he has family down that way that will be affected. But even so, why does God seem to have second thoughts about leaving without telling Abraham his business? Well, more than once in the Bible, it states that Abraham was a friend of God. Not just a servant, a friend. You know the saying, you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family? Well, God picked Abraham as a friend. Mind blown again. Now here's my question, and it's purely a question, not an answer by any means. As Abraham stands on Mount Moriah, having just made God as proud as punch, on the same mountain that David and Solomon will rule the nation that comes from Isaac, having defeated all their enemies, God tells Abraham that his descendants will be like the stars in the sky and possess the gates of their enemies. In the place where a ram is caught by the horns in a thorn bush, so it was suitable for sacrifice, God tells him that through his seed will all the nations be blessed because he didn't withhold his son. On Mount Moriah, where God's only son would take the place of us all with thorns on his head. So my imagination asks me the same question that God asked himself over a smaller matter in chapter 18. Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? It blows my mind to think of the relationship God had with Abraham, and with how significant a place the top of Moriah was to be. I can't help myself but wonder at just what Abraham might have seen up there that day, apart from a ram and stars and sand. It's just my imagination, but that blows my mind. And here's one last verse quickly that sums up what blows my mind about these two characters, and particularly about how God felt about them personally. And actually, it's even better. We all know the verse, but let's just quickly look as I finish at how mind-blowing every single word of this is. John 3:16. God. Think about that. God, complete in himself already. So loved. This is how much he loved, right? Really. Who? What? The world. The world. He loved it even when it didn't love him back. End the verse there, and it's one of the most mind-blowing statements you'll ever read anywhere. But wait. That. Pivotal word right here. It's not just that God loved us, but he so loved us that he's about to be moved to act on it. How did he act? God did this. What? Gave. He didn't allow us to take something. He didn't buy one for us. He gave. It's not a sacrifice if it doesn't cost you anything. So what did he give? His only son. The very thing he loved Abraham enough not to take from him, he freely gives. But wait, another pivotal word. So up to now it's mind-blowing that God would even act this way, but we're about to find out why. Whosoever, what? Whatever the benefit of God giving his only son is going to be, it's open to whosoever. Whether you have the humility of Moses or the faith of Abraham or not, whosoever believeth on him, simply by believing, will, not might, not could, will not perish, spared like Isaac on Moriah, but, hold on to your seats, there's more, have, not only do I lose death, but I get to gain something too out of this, everlasting life. Every word in this verse deserves a mind-blowing emoji for me. And here's what ties all three of these mind-blowing things together for me. For reasons known only to himself, beyond all logic, for no conceivable personal gain to himself, at the absolute highest cost, with the least chance of value for money, God Almighty, Lord of heaven and earth, chose to love us. Wow. I'm going to pray as we close. Heavenly Father, I'm just dust, Lord. I'm not your servant Moses. I'm not your friend Abraham. I'm just one of those whosoevers. Lord, and through so many a crowd of witnesses of what you have done, Lord, I have believed. And what can I do, Lord, in the light of this, Lord, but thank you. Thank you for your Son, Lord. Thank you for his blood. Thank you for my salvation. Thank you for the breath in my lungs for another day. Lord, help us today as your church go out, Lord, to try and be your hands and feet, even though we're all kept separate from each other. Ask these things in Jesus' precious name and for his name's sake. Amen. God bless you. Have a good day.
No eye has seen, no ear has heard. All you have planned, what lies before. But this we know.